You call that a grouping, son? Looks more like buckshot from a blunderbuss than precision fire from a trained Marine. The words, sharp and laced with a dismissive sneer, cut through the crisp desert air, instantly silencing the tense whispers that had begun to ripple across the dusty firing line. Staff Sergeant Miller, a man whose uniform still bore the creases of its issue and whose youth still clung to him like an unearned medal, stood over the target, a constellation of wildly scattered bullet holes mocking the designated bullseye. Beside him, Lance Corporal Jennings, his face streaked with sweat and frustration, shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on his combat-issue sniper rifle, which felt suddenly alien in his grasp. The sniper team, all young, all fit, all brimming with the fierce, often arrogant confidence of elite warriors, exchanged uneasy glances. They were the best, or so they had been told. Yet, for the past week, their performance had been abysmal, a parade of missed targets and flustered excuses that baffled their instructors. Their unit, lauded for its exceptional marksmanship, was failing spectacularly at this advanced sniper qualification, a critical precursor to their upcoming deployment. The pressure was a tangible weight, pressing down on each man, threatening to crack the veneer of their hardened composure. An elderly figure, a man of indeterminate age, whose face was a roadmap of wrinkles carved by sun and time, shuffled slowly past the line of dejected Marines. He wore a faded, well-worn utility jacket, its color long since surrendered to countless washings, and a pair of equally ancient work boots. A tattered baseball cap, emblazoned with a nearly illegible emblem, sat low on his brow, casting his eyes into shadow. He moved with a deliberate slowness that spoke of years spent under harsh skies, perhaps on a tractor or tending a forgotten patch of land. He carried a battered, canvas-wrapped rifle case, its contents a mystery. The young Marines, engrossed in their own anxieties and the scathing critique from Staff Sergeant Miller, barely registered his presence, dismissing him as just another curious local, perhaps a groundskeeper or a delivery man who had wandered onto the restricted range. Miller, still seething, turned to his team. "Another day of this pathetic display, and you'll all be on latrine duty for the rest of your careers. I swear to God." His voice dropped, venomous. "You're supposed to be snipers, the best of the best. You're supposed to be surgical, invisible, lethal. Right now, you're just expensive cannon fodder." Jennings flinched, his jaw tightening. He wanted to argue, to explain the inexplicable wind shifts, the mirage, the unfamiliar rifle, but the words caught in his throat. The old man, now standing near the back of the line, paused. His head tilted almost imperceptibly as if catching a faint, distant sound that no one else could hear. His shadow-veiled eyes, however, seemed to linger on the M40A5 sniper rifle clutched in Jennings' hand, a weapon that represented the pinnacle of modern precision. There was a flicker, a momentary spark in those deep-set eyes, like embers stirred in a forgotten hearth. Staff Sergeant Miller, still pacing, caught sight of the old man from the corner of his eye. Annoyed by the intrusion, he barked, "Hey, old-timer! This is a restricted military range. You need to clear out now." The old man didn't flinch, didn't move. He simply stood, a silent, weathered sentinel against the backdrop of the dusty hills. His gaze, unblinking, slowly shifted from the modern sniper rifles to the targets, then back to the frantic, frustrated young faces of the Marines. There was no defiance in his stillness, only a profound, almost ancient calm that seemed out of place in the charged atmosphere. Miller, accustomed to immediate obedience, felt his irritation spike. "Did you hear me?" I said. "Clear out. This isn't a museum tour. We're working here." He took a step towards the old man, his voice rising in volume. "Unless you've got some official business, you're interfering with a training exercise. And that, my friend, is a federal offense." Just then, Captain Davies, the commanding officer of the training detachment, A woman whose authority was as undeniable as the rank on her collar arrived, her face a mask of stern disappointment. She had been observing the team's dismal performance from the command tower, and her patience was wearing thin. "What's going on here, Staff Sergeant?" she demanded, her voice cutting like a razor. Miller snapped to attention. "Captain, just a civilian, sir, who seems to be lost. I was just escorting him off the range." He gestured dismissively at the old man. Captain Davies glanced at the elderly figure, then at the scattered targets, then back to her struggling team, her brow furrowed. "Another terrible day, gentlemen. Another day closer to embarrassing yourselves in front of the entire battalion." She sighed, running a hand through her closely cropped hair. "We're running out of time. If you don't qualify by the end of the week, this deployment is off the table for all of you." A palpable wave of despair washed over the team. Jennings felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach, their dreams, their careers, their honor, all teetering on the brink of failure. The old man, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly clear despite its age, spoke for the first time. "Trouble with the wind, are we?" His question was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried an unexpected weight, cutting through the tension with an almost physical presence. Miller scoffed. "And what would you know about it, Granddad? Think you can just waltz in here and give us advice?" A few of the younger Marines snickered nervously, but Captain Davies, a keen observer of human nature, noticed something in the old man's eyes, a depth, an intelligence that belied his unassuming appearance. She held up a hand, silencing Miller. "Let him speak, Staff Sergeant. At this point, I'm open to suggestions from anyone." She turned to the old man, her expression softening slightly. "You seem to know something about shooting, sir." The old man offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "A thing or two, many years ago." He slowly unslung the canvas case from his shoulder, setting it down with a gentle thud. The worn fabric, stained and faded, seemed to hum with a silent history. He knelt, his movements slow but deliberate, and began to unbuckle the leather straps. As the old man carefully unrolled the canvas, revealing a rifle that was both ancient and meticulously maintained, a hush fell over the range. It wasn't a modern precision rifle, not like the M40A5s the Marines wielded. This was a bolt-action rifle, its blued steel barrel gleaming with a rich, dark patina that spoke of countless hours of care and use. The wooden stock, worn smooth in places by the touch of hands, was a deep, lustrous walnut. It had no optical scope, only a set of finely crafted iron sights. It was a relic, a ghost from another era, starkly contrasting with the high-tech equipment surrounding it. "This old girl," he murmured, his fingers tracing the cool metal. "She's seen a few things, heard a few stories." The young Marines stared, fascinated despite themselves. Even Miller, though still skeptical, found himself momentarily speechless. Captain Davies, her eyes narrowing, felt a prickle of intuition. There was something more to this man, something hidden beneath the unassuming facade. The old man carefully assembled the rifle, his movements economical, precise, almost ritualistic. He ran a practiced eye down the barrel, then peered through the iron sights. He then picked up a handful of cartridges from a small leather pouch, each brass casing gleaming in the sun. He wasn't using the standard military rounds. These were slightly different, hand-loaded perhaps. He looked at Jennings, whose rifle still lay beside him. "May I, son?" Jennings, surprised, nodded numbly. The old man approached the firing line, his steps more assured now, the previous shuffle replaced by a quiet authority. He knelt, not prone but in a seated position, his back straight, his elbows resting on his knees. It was an old-school shooting stance, rarely taught in modern military training. He took a deep, measured breath, then exhaled slowly, His eyes, now unshaded by the cap, were a startlingly clear blue, sharp and focused. He seemed to enter a different state, a place where only the rifle, the target, and the breath existed. He loaded a single round, the click of the bolt echoing in the sudden silence. Winds coming from the northwest, fluctuating at about 7 knots, gusting to 10, he said, his voice a calm drone. And that mirage, it's playing tricks on your eyes, making the target appear higher than it is. You're compensating too much, pushing your shots low and right. He paused, his gaze fixed on the distant target, almost a mile away. You have to feel the wind, son. Not just read it. Feel it on your cheek, in your hair, even in the way the dust shifts. It's a living thing. He took another breath, then squeezed the trigger. The shot was a crisp, sharp crack that seemed to rip the air. A moment later, a small puff of dust erupted from the center of the target, directly in the bullseye. The sound of the bullet striking the steel plate, a distant clank, was a fraction of a second behind. A collective gasp rose from the Marines. They exchanged disbelieving looks. One shot with iron sights. At a mile, the old man didn't move, his eyes still fixed on the target. He loaded another round, his movements fluid and unhurried. Now, the next one, he continued, his voice calm. I'll show you how a slight cant of the rifle can throw your shot off by inches at this distance. It's a subtle thing, but at a mile, inches become feet. He fired again. Another shot, another perfect bullseye directly on top of the first. The young Marines were stunned into silence. Even Captain Davies stared, her mouth slightly agape. This wasn't just good shooting, this was supernatural. This was a mastery of ballistics, of wind, of rifle, and of self that transcended anything they had ever witnessed. Miller, his face pale, looked from the old man to the target, then back again, a growing sense of dread mingling with awe. Who was this man? The old man fired 3 more shots, each one a perfect bullseye, creating a single ragged hole in the very center of the target. A perfect 5-shot grouping, so tight it could be covered by a quarter. He lowered the rifle, a faint smile touching his lips. He then looked at Jennings, his clear blue eyes piercing. Your rifle, son, it's not just a tool. It's an extension of your will. You have to understand it, respect it, become one with it. And the wind is your dance partner. You don't fight it, you move with it. He rose slowly, handing the rifle back to Jennings. The young Marine took it, his hands trembling slightly, the weapon feeling heavier, more significant than it ever had before. Who are you, sir? Jennings stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The old man chuckled softly. Just an old soldier, son. Just an old soldier. Just then, the distant roar of an approaching helicopter shattered the silence. A UH-60 Blackhawk, its dark silhouette growing rapidly against the azure sky, descended towards the range, kicking up a vortex of dust. As it landed, its rotors slowly winding down, a figure emerged from the cabin. He was a tall, imposing man in an impeccably tailored Marine Corps dress uniform, adorned with a chest full of medals and the insignia of a 2-star general. General Maxwell Max Sterling, the very commander of the entire Marine Corps Expeditionary Force in the region, stepped onto the dusty ground. He was a legend, a fierce warrior, and a man whose presence commanded immediate and absolute respect. The Marines snapped to attention, saluting sharply. Captain Davies, her eyes wide with surprise, rendered a crisp salute. General Sterling returned the salute, his gaze sweeping over the range, then stopping abruptly on the old man. A flicker of recognition, then a profound shock crossed the general's face. General Sterling walked past the saluting Marines as if they were invisible, his eyes locked on the unassuming elder. He stopped directly in front of the old man, and to the utter astonishment of every Marine present, the 2-star general, a man who commanded thousands, snapped to attention and delivered a salute, so sharp, so deferential, it seemed to crackle in the air. "Sergeant Major," General Sterling said, his voice deep with respect, "I received your message. It is an honor to see you again." The old man, still calm, returned the salute with a relaxed dignity that held an unspoken authority. "General Sterling," he acknowledged, his voice soft, "it has been a long time." The Marines stood frozen, mouths agape. Sergeant Major. This unassuming old man was a sergeant major, and not just any sergeant major, but one to whom a general rendered such profound respect. The implications were staggering. General Sterling turned to the stunned Marines, his expression now stern. "Marines," he boomed, his voice resonating across the range, "you stand in the presence of Sergeant Major Elijah Thorne." His gaze settled on Staff Sergeant Miller, whose face had gone completely ashen. Sergeant Major Thorne is not just an old-timer or a lost civilian. He is a living legend, a recipient of the Navy Cross for Valor in Vietnam, where he served 3 tours as a reconnaissance sniper. He holds the record for the longest confirmed kill in Marine Corps history for over 30 years, a record only recently broken. He trained the most elite sniper teams in the Corps for decades before his retirement. He literally wrote the book on long-range precision marksmanship that you all study. He paused, letting the weight of the revelation sink in. And he just put 5 rounds through the same hole at a mile with a vintage rifle and iron sights, something none of you with all your modern technology have been able to accomplish this week. Miller swayed slightly, as if struck. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. He had insulted a legend, mocked a hero, dismissed a master. The enormity of his disrespect crashed down on him, suffocating him with shame. Jennings, his eyes wide with awe, looked at the old man, then at his own rifle, then back at Sergeant Major Thorne. The silence on the range was absolute, broken only by the gentle sigh of the desert wind. General Sterling continued, his voice softer now, but no less commanding. "Sergeant Major Thorne contacted me directly, concerned about the declining standards he witnessed here. He expressed a desire to remind you of the fundamental principles of your craft." He turned back to Thorne. "Sergeant Major, with your permission, I'd like you to oversee the remainder of this qualification." Thorne nodded slowly. "It would be my honor, General." General Sterling then turned his steely gaze back to Miller. "Staff Sergeant Miller, your disrespect towards a Marine Corps legend is an egregious breach of protocol and conduct. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as range instructor and will be assigned to administrative support until further notice. You will also be personally assisting Sergeant Major Thorne in any capacity he requires." Miller, unable to meet the general's eyes, stammered, "Yes, sir." "Understood, sir." His humiliation was complete, absolute, and utterly public. The general then looked at the rest of the sniper team. "As for the rest of you, you are incredibly fortunate. You have a chance to learn from the best this Corps has ever produced. Listen to him. Learn from him. Understand what it truly means to be a Marine Corps sniper." He paused, his gaze sweeping over each man. "This isn't about technology or fancy gear. It's about skill, discipline, patience, and above all, respect for the craft and the legacy you carry." For the next 2 days, Sergeant Major Elijah Thorne took over the sniper qualification. He moved among the young Marines, a quiet, guiding presence. He didn't yell, didn't chastise. Instead, he taught with a calm wisdom, sharing insights gleaned from decades of experience. He spoke of reading the subtle currents of the wind, of understanding the dance of light and shadow, of the profound connection between shooter and rifle. He emphasized breath control, mental discipline, and the art of patience. He showed them how to feel the rifle, how to become one with it, how to trust their instincts over the cold calculations of a computer. He had Miller, humbled and chastened, retrieve targets, clean rifles, and fetch water, all under Thorne's watchful eye. The staff sergeant, stripped of his authority, slowly began to listen, to observe, to learn. Under Sergeant Major Thorne's tutelage, the transformation was remarkable. The young Marines, initially skeptical, quickly became ardent students. Their groupings tightened, their confidence grew, and the frustration that had plagued them dissipated, replaced by a quiet determination. Jennings, in particular, blossomed under Thorne's guidance. The old man spent hours with him, patiently explaining the nuances of long-range ballistics, the subtle art of camouflage, and the psychological warfare of the sniper. He taught Jennings to trust his gut, to listen to the whispers of the wind, to see not just the target, but the entire environment as an interconnected whole. The rifle in Jennings' hands, once a frustrating tool, now felt like an extension of his own body, a precision instrument capable of extraordinary feats. On the final day of qualification, with General Sterling observing once more, the sniper team performed flawlessly. Each Marine achieved perfect scores, their shots forming tight, precise groupings directly in the bullseye. The transformation was complete. As the final targets were retrieved, General Sterling clapped his hands, a genuine smile finally breaking through his usual stern demeanor. "Marines," he declared, his voice filled with pride, "you have all qualified. And you have done so with distinction." He then turned to Sergeant Major Thorne, his respect evident in every line of his posture. "Sergeant Major, you have once again demonstrated why you are a legend. Thank you for your service and for reminding us all of the true meaning of marksmanship." The general then turned to Miller, who stood straighter, a newfound humility in his eyes. "Staff Sergeant, you have a long way to go, but I see a flicker of understanding there. Continue to learn, continue to serve, and perhaps one day you might just live up to the legacy you've been so privileged to witness." A few weeks later, as the sniper team prepared for deployment, Jennings found Sergeant Major Thorne sitting alone on a bench near the range, cleaning his old rifle. "Sergeant Major," Jennings said, his voice respectful. Thorne looked up, a warm smile on his face. "Lance Corporal, ready to go make your mark?" Jennings nodded. "Thanks to you, sir. I wanted to apologize for how we all acted." Thorne waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense, son. Youth is wasted on the young, they say. It takes time to learn, to understand, and sometimes it takes a swift kick in the pants from an old man." He chuckled softly. "Just remember what I told you. Feel the wind, be one with your rifle, and never, ever forget the responsibility that comes with the power you wield." "There's something else, sir," Jennings hesitated, then continued. Why didn't you say anything earlier? When Staff Sergeant Miller was disrespecting you?" Thorne looked out at the distant hills, his eyes distant as if seeing ghosts. "Because, son," he said, his voice quiet, profound, "a true master doesn't need to announce himself. His work speaks for itself. And sometimes," he looked at Jennings, a twinkle in his eye, "the loudest lessons are taught in silence." He wiped the last bit of oil from his rifle, its blued steel gleaming under the desert sun. "Go now, Lance Corporal. Go make us proud." As Jennings walked away, his stride more confident, his rifle feeling lighter yet more potent, he carried with him not just the lessons of marksmanship, but the enduring wisdom of a true hero. The legend of Sergeant Major Elijah Thorne, the unassuming elder who had reminded them all of the true meaning of skill, humility, and honor, would forever be etched into the very fabric of their unit, a silent guardian over their future endeavors. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the range, the old Marine simply sat, a timeless sentinel, his weathered hands caressing the ancient wood and steel, a quiet testament to a lifetime of unwavering service.